philosophy of the great another humanitarian thing like Bush when they sent them into Somalia. Then why don't we go into Rwanda where millions of people have been killed? Why not Nigeria where you have a terrible dictator? He's killing all the intellectuals, plus he's murdering thousands of his own countrymen. I mean, if that's going to be one of his main reasons of going to Bosnia, why don't we've got countries all over the world that the people are getting killed even more dreadfully than they in Bosnia, you see.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I think the policy of sending in Americans to police this alleged peace in Bosnia is an abomination.
It's a disaster.
Completely wrong, and as a matter of fact, I'm very tempted to do the show next Sunday exclusively on the Bosnia situation because
yes.
I hear that Clinton is doing an Oval Office speech tomorrow night on Monday in which he's going to set forth why this is in our national interest. So I'm going to save that for next time. But I agree with you completely. But just before, let's tie it in today to liberal and conservative.
Well, here's how I'm going to do that.
You're going to say, let me take a guess, you're going to say, well, the conservatives don't say this. Only the liberals want slaughter for foreign countries, and therefore the conservatives are better, right?
No, here's what I'm saying.
All right.
See, after World War II, you had Stalin started the more or less turning the screws on the Cold War.
Right.
And Truman, with the Marshall Plan right after World War II, he had a bipartisan between the liberals and conservative Vandenberg, and they said, go ahead with the Marshall Plan. Now, the Cold War gets so bad, and McCarthy starts with everybody's a communist. Truman says, well, I'm not going to get involved in Asia now. I'm fighting communism in Europe. So he says to Atchison, he said, South Korea is no longer in our sphere of influence. So Kim Il-sung takes it as a sign of he can invade South Korea. Now, Truman has to be appealed to the conservatives. You see, he has to be tough. He has to be tough and take a hard line. So he goes into South Korea with this UN thing. That turns out to be a disaster. And after 3 or 4 years, when Truman more or less backs Stevenson and Eisenhower has to come in and promise to nuke them, do we get a peace agreement, which is very precarious after 40 years. That is where the liberals are doing pretty good, and they have to be as tough as the conservatives.
So are you trying to say that the conservatives make it harder for the liberals to engage in these foreign ventures?
Absolutely. Look at Johnson. Johnson.
Yes,
when he took over from Kennedy, he had to get tough because he had the right wing, the conservatives, saying, look, you've got to stop communism, the domino theory. So Johnson gets even tougher.
Well, I'd say if I can get my thought in here, and we actually have quite a number of people on the board. I'd like to give them a chance to speak. But let me give you this answer.
All right.
I think there's a yes and a no to what you're saying. It is true that on the whole, the liberals have been in favor of foreign adventures, and the conservatives have tried to take the position of America first. If we don't have a strong national interest, we should not go in, which is absolutely true. And from that point of view, I would think there's less chance of war if we're going to get conservatives, get American patriots in. But the question is, where do the liberals get the ideas from that take us into these wars? Now, where do they get this idea, for instance? Now, listen to this.
All right.
There's these people in Bosnia suffering, dying, being killed, hundreds of thousands of them. We have the power to help them. It's our moral obligation to step in. Where do the liberals get the idea that it's our moral obligation to do it?
Because
No, just think.
Yeah.
Who says it's your moral obligation to look after the poor and the suffering and to help them?
Because
and that you shouldn't be concerned with your self-interest.
Because they're humanitarians, and they want everyone else to be humanitarian.
Well, where do they get that idea that humanitarianism is good?
Yes.
Where does it come from?
Well, help your brother. Give a helping hand to.
And who tells you that?
Well, I'm just saying.
Tell me, where do you get that from?
Well, you get that from the compassion.
But compassion, who makes compassion into the super virtue of all virtues?
Well, of course, if compassion is very hard to formulate foreign policy.
But you're not telling me who is the biggest sponsor in history of compassion, love, Love your neighbor. If your neighbor is suffering, it's up to you to do something about it.
Well, I would say that a good, wonderful, warm-hearted liberal.
No, sirree. It's a strong, believing conservative.
Well, now I have to disagree.
Wait a minute. Let me just get a word in here. The religious people throughout history are the ones who have said it is our moral obligation to turn the other cheek and to look after those in suffering around the globe. They were the ones that were behind the whole idea of altruism and sacrifice for others.
Yeah, but present-day Republicans don't follow that course.
Well, the present-day Republicans are in a direct contradiction, sir.
Yes.
On the one hand, they preach all these things, but they want it to stop at the water.
That's right.
At the border.
Right, Doctor.
So the liberals are simply saying, look, you people talk about humanitarianism and our moral obligation. We're just carrying it one step further. Why should we be selfish and just look after our own nation? If selfishness is wrong, then we should be sacrificing ourselves for the whole world.
Yes.
So what I say is, this conservatives, so far from defending us from these liberals, have laid the moral ground for the liberals, and the conservatives are inconsistent. They give all the preaching to go and sacrifice and serve and everything, and then when they see it happening, they say, no, just for the poor here at home. You can't have it both ways. Either you're going to believe in what we call the virtue of selfishness, in which case you say at home or abroad there is no sacrifice, or you're going to believe in the ethics of service, sacrifice, self-abnegation, in which case the more somebody needs, the more you're obligated, whether they're American or not. So what we need is a moral reappraisal, and the liberals are just carrying out what the conservatives have said. I got to run now. Thanks very much for your call.
Thank you, Doctor.
We got a call from John on no. Yes, John. Can you make a big jump from Bosnia to Medicare, I guess?
Love to, Dr. Peikoff.
Okay.
Over the last 30 years, it appears to me that health care, from being a pursuit of your own happiness to get it, has become, or trying to become, a right that the government...
Now, we got a lot of static. Are you in a car?
No.
Okay.
I'll try to speak up. At this point, with Medicare, people have a right to have it. This is clearly not consistent with what the Constitution meant,
no, sir.
and what is moral. Since you raised the question of politics, this is a political question. My understanding is only 5% of people who retire have $25,000 in the bank. Their plight is woeful. If this socialist program, Medicaid, were to end, I'll tell you, it pulls on my remembered altruist heartstrings, the plight of these people.
Yeah.
What would I tell the public about this?
Well, I can't challenge your figures. I'm getting tremendous static here. Is that part of the...
I'm going to go and let you answer the question.
Okay, you hang up and then maybe the static will go in. There, the static is gone. Great. But I hope you're still there listening on the other side. Unfortunately, you can't answer me back, but I'll answer you briefly this way. No one in his right mind would say, cut these programs off now and let people starve in the streets. You cannot do that because people have reached, let us say, the age of 65, 70. They've had this money and taxes taken from them. They have been promised that they are going to be looked after in their old age. It would be positively immoral when they've lost the capacity to earn. They're infirm now, they're in the hospital, whatever, to suddenly say, sorry, we're going back to capitalism now and you people have to die. That would be vicious. The proper transition has got to be the people who are already past the age of self-support have got to be taken care of as a transition generation because they were promised that. Where you cut it off is a couple decades earlier. And you have a sliding scale. This is the only reasonable way to do it. You say you're 35. You still got a whole lifetime to earn and to produce, look after yourself. This is what I would do. You're 35. You don't pay any more taxes, FICA, to look after your Medicare or Social Security. But by the same token, when you get to be 65, we don't give you anything. Go out there, earn, put it in an account. Good luck to you. You're 45, let's say, or 50. Your life production is half gone. We cut your premium in half. You supplement it by half. Then when you retire, it's partly your money, partly the government's. In other words, we phase it out gradually so that the young people today are not taxed to death and have their own responsibility. In one generation, the problem would be over, and there would be no sacrifice of the old to the young, whereas what we have right now is a total sacrifice of the young to the old. The young people are bled for taxes, and then the money goes to the old who are having these incredibly expensive operations to prolong their lives a few seconds or months. And the statistics are that if you're young now, they're going to run out of money completely. And by the time your turn comes, there's going to be no money for you. Phase it out gradually. That is the best single solution. And now we're going to go to a commercial. It is 12:47. My name is Leonard Peikoff. Our topic is liberal and conservative, and we've got Ed. How you doing, Ed?
Just fine, Leonard.
Good.
Bob Dole derives a large benefit by being the leader in the Senate. Television exposure is at his disposal every day just based on the business that he's conducting, which gives him name recognition. But if I look at his history and see what happened in the TEFRA tax increase during the Reagan administration, the Democrats promised a three-time cut from every dollar of tax increase that Reagan committed to, which would have meant a $450 billion cut in expenditures. Now, Mr. Dole was the leader in the Senate when that was supposed to be enforced, but yet when we saw in the conference committees, nothing happened. In other words, he did not force the Senate's will on the Democrats at that time. And in the Andrews Air Force Base tax program that he set up for Bush to sign, which broke the promise, here again we have Bob Dole with his fingerprints all over it again, and this man is not a leader. Now, what are we going to end up with if we elect this gentleman just on the basis that he can spend $1,800 per vote in Florida to win a straw poll and keep his image up as being a nice guy, which is what he's selling himself as?
Well, I'm sorry to say that I agree with you 100%. You know, Bob Dole was called by the more pro-capitalist candidates the financier of the welfare state because he kept pushing through the tax increases to pay for the welfare programs. Dole is a moderate with a leaning toward conservatism, whereas Bush was a moderate with a leaning toward liberalism. Now, which is better or worse? The only thing I like about Dole is he doesn't have much of a commitment to all of these religious amendments. He's being dragged, kicking and screaming, into proving that he's a friend of the fundamentalists, but really he's just a middle-of-the-road Republican. So he's got the vices of being that, but the only virtue he's got is I don't think he's an hawk to any particular pressure group. But the problem is I don't think he stands for a set of core convictions at all. And it's very dangerous to have a president, as we can see from Clinton, who stands for actually nothing that really matters. Dole apparently went up before a group of Republicans a while back and said to them, I want to be president. I'll be what you want me to be. This was widely publicized. You want me to be Reagan? I'll be Reagan. Now, nobody can be what somebody else wants him to be, so it means that he's got a large streak of malleability, which really turns me off from voting for him. I'd have to judge what the circumstances are at the time, but I certainly agree with you. He's not a leader. But who is? Who would you recommend in his place today?
Well, I'm looking for somebody who's honest and says what he means and means what he says. And
Yeah,
I
but
say,
that doesn't get you too far.
that gets me into Pat Buchanan territory.
Well, yeah, Buchanan means what he says, but Buchanan has got an awful lot of problems. I'd take Dole over Buchanan any day simply because Buchanan introduces some